This video is how you start your D&D campaign, the first moments of that very first session. And I'm going to show you what I think is the absolute best way to do that. Look, the first few moments of any game that you run are paramount. And I think we underestimate that. Starting confidently and as immersively as possible can draw your players in and set the tone for the entire game. And it can even trick them into thinking that you know what you're doing, which you don't, because none of us actually do. That's kind of the thing. Now look, for the first few years I was DMing, I was doing what I saw done. I was doing what everyone was doing. I call it the world dump. This monologue-esque speech from some omnipotent point of view, some wide world overview. Continents and city names, factions, governing bodies, even world histories spanning back thousands of years. This is how the Lord of the Rings movies did it. This is how Mercer did it. So it must be the way we all do it, right? No. Wrong. Absolutely not. All of this information is important to the world and, of course, the story, but not right now. Your players are most likely 1 to 3, a low-level party, and they will be engaging in low-level party storylines. We don't need scene setting. We need scene dressing. They need to feel what it's like to be where they are immediately. Our players don't need to be told what the world as a whole is struggling with, but instead what it feels like to sit inside this tavern, or this cart, or this prison. They need an insight into the lives of the characters around them, and what it feels in this moment here today. They need the overall vibes and themes. They need to see the cobble street outside the window, not a slow pan of a world map with thousands of years of lore and legend. A few years ago, I started watching a criminally underrated actual play, one that changed my perspective on the way a lot of this stuff is done. And it completely changed my objectives when it comes to this first moment. The show is called Tabletop Notch, and the DM is truly impressive. Seriously, how Matt Taylor is not bigger than he already is disheartening. He is constantly breaking our expectations of what we want out of a D&D game and how to interact with the players. But I think what he does here has been most influential to me and my game. So when I found them, I started at the beginning of a campaign, one of their games. Now the session began and there were a few minutes of announcements, as there usually are, and then the intro began. And I slowly started to tune out, as I was expecting. Welcome to insert world here, where X, Y, and Z. And then the DM did this.
When I speak the name of Bronchollow, I am certain that it is not the first time that you have heard it. Perhaps for many of the empty seats beside you, the last word uttered by the now vacant party was indeed this name, Bronchollow.
He played out a scene. There was world lore tied into it, and a great deal of context given, but it didn't feel like exposition. Now I'm going to let a few minutes of this play out because I think it's important. But if you're a DM, you should go back and watch the intro to Bronchollow, as well as the intro to the second season of the first campaign.
I see empty chairs in here today. More so than a week prior, and a week before that ought be described as an embarrassment of riches compared to the pauperous assembly I see now before me. I hold you not in contempt, nor seek to rebuke or blame. It is our nature's prevailing penchant to seek to better ourselves, improve our position, our lot.
Now this does two things incredibly well. One, it sets a vibe and a tone for the game that is unmistakable. And two, it doesn't leave the players scrambling to take notes. They don't feel like they are getting this wealth of bullet point information that they have to record that in reality won't be necessary to their game or will otherwise be delivered later on again through actual gameplay. And it certainly wouldn't be full of things that they needed right now. Instead, you can watch the players sit back and get sucked into the moment. As soon as he's done talking, they're in the game. And that's the goal. See, sometimes we forget this as world builders. We get obsessed with the little details and pieces of what we have put together, and we forget that the only story that matters is the one in front of our players, the one that they are telling. Now, I have done this since. I played out a small scene as an NPC that my characters would almost immediately interact with. It was a captain's log as they were beginning on a ship. And I use that log to add context about the number of other passengers, the purpose of the voyage, this ship's place in the overall empirical struggles that were going on at the time. But I didn't outright define those. I played out a scene from a character's point of view on the ship at that moment. I put the feeling into it before the information, and my players were in. Moment 1. I have never had a table slip so seamlessly into a game before. The overall strife of the Empire is irrelevant if our players aren't feeling like they live in the Empire. Don't tell them there is a war going on, but describe the inexperienced bartender struggling to cope since her husband was sent off to the front lines. This makes things personal. It makes it feel like it's happening to the characters. So if you take anything away from this video, make it this. Don't lecture your players about your world. Give them a look inside of it.